Okay, we're in module 3, and this is part 2, talking about preterite verbs. We already discussed in part 1 how to conjugate AR verbs and some endings, some irregular spelling changes that occur in some verbs in the yo form. So if you haven't watched that, go ahead and check that out. So now we're looking at ER and IR verbs. The good news is they are the same in the preterite tense, so you don't have to remember separate ones for the ER, verbs that end in ER and verbs that end in IR. So you're going to use these endings for both forms. So an example, we could use the verb escribir. To say I wrote, escribí. You wrote, escribiste. She wrote, escribió. Okay, so that's the different forms of the verb. For example, the one we have here is escribir. Now, again, really all you have to do is memorize these endings. You already know how to conjugate verbs. You know what the process is. So these are just new endings that you're going to use when you're talking about something that happened in the past and happened one time. Okay, so here are some irregular ones that you do just have to memorize everything about. The verb ir is irregular in the present tense, and it's also irregular in the preterite. So to say I went, you'd say yo fui. Okay, so it's completely doesn't look anything like it, so you just have to memorize that. You'll notice here also it says ser in the preterite is also fui. So how are you going to know the difference? It's all about context, okay? So that's the only way that you're going to know the difference. So there's a difference between I went to the store. Obviously you weren't to the store. So, you know, keep in mind it's easier than it looks when you're actually looking at a sentence that you're changing or conjugating or translating. All right, so let's practice a little bit. Go ahead and practice the endings and how you would say Juan and Maria ate pizza. They ate. So you would go back and look at your endings, okay, that have to do with ER verbs. You'd find the we form, and you would add imos. So, or I'm sorry, since it's ellos or ellas, it'd be ieron. Okay, so go ahead, pause the recording if you need to, and go ahead and see if you can figure out how you would say all of these verbs in the past. Okay, and the last major thing that you want to make sure that you are paying attention to for Module 3 is the vocabulary, vocabulario. And there is a lot of new vocabulary, again, things that you may not have heard before, you may not know, and very important vocabulary because chances are if you are going to speak Spanish, one of the times that you might be speaking that is when you're on vacation. And one of the most important things you're going to do when you're on vacation is to go to a hotel. So how do you ask for different places in the hotel? How do you ask for a hotel room? How do you say you want a hotel room? You know, next a double bed and next to the pool, things like that. So make sure you are practicing all of your vocabulary having to do with not just chores but also with the hotel.